Good to see you. Fierce shelling and gunfire has rocked the city of Aleppo as the Syrian army targets fighters from the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces for a third day. The military is targeting SDF positions in several densely populated Kurdish-majority neighbourhoods. At least 18 people have been killed since Tuesday. Both sides are blaming each other for the violence. It broke out after talks on integrating Kurdish-led forces into the national army collapsed. Well, thousands more civilians are fleeing the fighting in Aleppo. Many of them are leaving through humanitarian corridors. Some have been taking shelter in schools and mosques. Well, Ayman Oghanna is live in Damascus for us, but first let's speak to Resul Serdar in a hospital in Aleppo. Resul, as I mentioned there, you're in a hospital. Who are the casualties being brought there? Are they civilians or combatants? And what sort of injuries are you seeing?
Indeed, both. Just it has been 20 minutes that we are in Razi Hospital, which is one of the most important public hospitals in Aleppo. And within these 20 minutes, we have seen at least 7 injured people arrived and 3 people killed. These are extremely high numbers. And still, at the vicinity of the hospital, the fightings continue, the shellings are continuing. Earlier today, SDF indeed has bombed the backyard of the hospital. So here is the emergency service of the hospital here. And so they're allowed to film the civilians, but as now there are military personnel inside, and now another shelling at the backyard. So as there are military personnel here, this is a civilian that is injured and has just arrived here. Now it has been the 8th one in 20 minutes, and the medical personnel here is quite struggling because the number of injured people that are arriving, some of them very much in critical conditions, are so high, and the hospital is under-equipped. This is the emergency service, and then here, this is the inner part of the hospital. We have just seen that 3 people who have recently, just in the last hours, being killed, have arrived here. Another civilian that is now injured, but the security forces here are not letting us to get to the other rooms. One of the senior member of the army has just arrived to that. It's difficult for us to verify his identity, but we can see that the military personnel here is extremely concerned about that. Another injured soldier is just right over there. And so now the security personnel here is asking us not to film inside, so we need to be extremely cautious and careful here. But what you are seeing in and around the hospital, the situation is just further and further escalating. This is a hospital, but definitely not safe. It's extremely difficult for the government forces to take the situation under control. Now, still, we've seen heavy shelling fires in the vicinity of the hospital. Just a little bit ago, 2 people who were killed has just been taken out of the hospital. So now soldiers here are asking us to leave the emergency service. We're walking out of the hospital, and now this is another injured civilian who have just arrived. The situation here is extremely tense. People injured after injured are arriving, and we're seeing that these are extreme numbers. So far, the government is saying that more than 150 people have been injured and 18 dead. But what we are seeing here is making one to extremely be doubtful about these figures that are coming from both sides. Perhaps in reality, the numbers are potentially much higher than what the official statements are telling us.
Resul, while you have been reporting and speaking there from the hospital, clearly a hive of activity. We've been looking also at the skyline of Aleppo, flashes of light from explosions, the streak of tracer fire That is a scene in Aleppo right now, an intense battle raging in Kurdish majority neighbourhoods in the city. Resul Serdar is reporting from inside a hospital where we've been seeing what look like civilians arriving there with injuries. Resul, given what we're seeing and given that what we're seeing looks to be extremely intense in Aleppo at the moment, is there any indication that we know who is getting the upper hand right now, whether government forces are feeling like they are reaching the climax of their operations there, or whether more work needs to be done? Is there any sense whatsoever of what direction this is going in?
Well, for now, we're seeing almost equally two equal powers, military powers, engaging in a fiercest fire that Syria has seen since the fall of Bashar al-Assad. So where we are at Razi Hospital, and we're hearing still the artillery shelling, one after another, just here, and more and more. This is very much close to Al-Ashrafiyah, indeed a couple of hundreds of meters away. And the government forces today, in the last couple of hours, have attempted several times to get to the inner areas in this neighborhood, but they have faced a fierce resistance from SDF, and these attempts of the government forces trying to advance into the center have been repelled. On the other hand, the government is saying that SDF also had several attempts to have a breakthrough the encirclements of the government forces, but they also were repelled. So here, mostly the fighting is still happening at the periphery of the districts of Al-Ashrafiyah and Sheikh Maqsoud, and it seems that more and more, you see the blood on that, just as from a man who just have arrived a couple of minutes ago. Now he has been taken to the inner parts of the hospital. We do not know exactly what has happened to him. But as I said, in the last 20-25 minutes while we were here, we have now seen at least 8 injured and 3 killed. One of them was hit in the head and the other in chest. So the numbers of the casualties are just dramatically going up here. The situation, what we are seeing, is just escalating, and there are no signs of the de-escalation here. We know that there are now the mediators and trying to de-escalate the situation, Americans and Turks, but as of now, these efforts have failed. The government officials say there are no direct negotiations between the government and the SDF forces, but these mediators so far have failed somehow to achieve a ceasefire or to somehow make sure that the both parties are engaged in a meaningful dialogue. And that is a huge concern now in Aleppo. It's not just now about the district of Sheikh Maqsoud and Ashrafieh. The neighbors around as well, the neighboring districts around are also now coming under the artillery shelling, the rocket firings, heavy machinery guns, and so on. And people are leaving these areas, not just Sheikh Maqsoud and Ashrafieh. We have seen hundreds of thousands of people leaving Al-Ashrafiyah and Sheikh Maqsoud, but now at the periphery of these two districts, in the other neighborhoods also, people are going away, trying to find the safer places. So the fighting is just spreading, and we are hearing constant firing and clashes all across the city, not just in two districts. You see another civilian who is injured have arrived. We do not know whether he has been killed or injured, but we're seeing that blood.
Resul, is it possible to say? Is it possible to say from where you are where these injured people are coming in from? Are they coming in from areas that have been under curfew, the Kurdish majority areas where these government operations are taking place against the SDF, or are they coming from areas beyond those control zones? I mean, you've described the situation as spreading, as bleeding into areas outside the areas where the operation has mainly taken place, but is it possible to give us a sense of the security impact, the wider security impact on Aleppo?
Mostly, these injured people are mostly coming from the district of al-Ashrafiyah, so where the majority of Kurds live there. But here, civilians that are arriving are not just Kurds, there are Arabs and other ethnicities as well. So more than 150,000 people left these areas, but the government officials are telling us that still more than 100,000 people are trapped there and they're caught in crossfire. As we are doing our live reporting here, we're also seeing more and more people are arriving, and these are quite dramatic pictures. We are seeing the majority of these injured people are in very critical conditions, while some other are already killed here. The situation here is just escalating further and further. Now I am seeing that another ambulance has just arrived here, and perhaps that's also carrying injured people. So Al-Razi Hospital in the last couple of hours, in the last few hours, has been extremely busy receiving the people who were injured or killed, civilians and military personnel.
When we say civilians, military personnel, Resul, is it possible to say, are we talking about a range of people, both Kurds and non-Kurds? We know, of course, Aleppo is a city of many different sectarian groups of different ethnicities, people who in normal times live and work side by side.
Indeed, normally this city is used to the coexistence of religions, of ethnicities, and so on. However, now Syria is dealing with a legacy of 14 years of civil war, which deepened these ethnic and sectarian divisions here. Now you're seeing these tensions are going up. So between Kurds and Arabs, between Alawites and Sunnis, and that is making the situation extremely delicate and very huge, very difficult task for the government really to have a proper reconciliation of the people. This, at the societal level, these divisions are perhaps the most significant challenges for the government and in front of the national unity here in Syria. This is a shattered nation, and now really healing these scars, these wounds that were caused by that civil war that lasted for over the course of 14 years is not easy. The government saying that is trying. In the last year, we have seen there have been constitutional reforms, political reforms, economic reforms, societal reforms, but as we are seeing, still the sectarian and ethnic clashes are once again up and are happening one after another.
This undoubtedly brings back memories of a time people in Aleppo thought would be in the past. Clearly what we're seeing is a continuation, an upsurge in violence as government forces tackle SDF fighters in several parts of Aleppo. Resul, we will be back with you, of course, monitoring the situation there. But this is the scene right now in Aleppo. I'm going to bring in Ayman Oghanna now, who joins us live from Damascus. Ayman, as this military operation continues to unfold in Aleppo, continues to intensify, I mean, what is it that the government of Damascus is saying about their ultimate goals in the city, how long this will last? Because, of course, their credibility hangs on getting this right, doesn't it?
Well, yes, the credibility for both sides. Both sides in their official statements are blaming the other party for initiating the conflict and for escalating it. The government in Damascus, for his part, has said that it's creating controlled military zones with a curfew, telling civilians to leave so that any SDF targets inside the areas of Sheikh Maqsoud and Ashrafieh, these Kurdish majority neighbourhoods, will be legitimate targets. But people we've been speaking to here in Damascus and across the country are looking for peaceful solutions and worried about the escalation between the two sides. After so many years of war, Syria has been devastated, and people are hoping that there can be a peaceful resolution to this conflict. Over the last decade in Syria, there have been two major wars. One, the war against the Assad regime, and second, the war against ISIL. Now, the new government and its coalition were successful in winning the war against the Assad regime, and the SDF, along with its US partners, were successful in eradicating the ISIL territorial so-called caliphate. But now, after failed integration talks back in March, the SDF was supposed to integrate into government institutions, but that had a New Year deadline which has passed, and now things are ratcheting up. So far, the fighting seems to be localized around Aleppo, but this could spark a broader conflict which would be very serious and grave indeed for the national unity of Syria. These two parties are quite strong. The SDF alone is estimated to have between 50 and 90,000 fighters. To put that into perspective, the British Army has about 73,000 active soldiers, and they're a formidable force. They've been trained by the US, backed by the US. They have a lot of combat experience, but if they go to war with Damascus, it'll be a very different kind of conflict. The SDF are used to working very closely with the Americans, with American advisors, special forces on the ground, and dependent on American airstrikes. It's very unlikely they will have that in a conflict with Damascus. Damascus, too, is used to fighting a different kind of enemy, particularly towards the end, a hollowed out Syrian regime army. So this new conflict would be very bloody and be a very different form of conflict between the two sides.
Ayman, as we all look at these trace of fire whizzing across the night sky in Aleppo, the crack of bullets, the flash of artillery, I mean, it does beg the question, you know, who and where is driving the diplomatic efforts here? I wonder what the governments in Ankara, in Washington, D.C., even European partners in Brussels will be making of all of this. Where do you think the effort diplomatically is right now, if there is one at all?
Two major... Sure, well, the two major foreign powers who have the ability to mediate or end this crisis, as you mentioned, Washington been the closest partner to the SDF over the last decade. They've worked very closely together to eradicate ISIL in Syria. And Ankara, too, has a big role to play. Ankara said today, a Turkish MP, that they would help do whatever it takes to end the violence in Aleppo. Now, Ankara is a key player because the SDF, in its eyes, is the branch of the Syrian branch of the PKK, an organization Ankara has been at war with since 1984 in a conflict that has killed 40,000 people. Earlier this year, the leader of the PKK called a ceasefire with Turkey and dissolved the PKK, leaving the SDF, in Turkey's eyes, in Ankara's eyes, as the existential threat on their border. But I think all of this will go back to the US. We also have Ursula von der Leyen visiting Damascus tomorrow. I'm sure the Europeans will have an effort in trying to de-escalate the situation. There was also a statement by the UK saying that the situation should be de-escalated, and the US has said that it's watching closely. But the US, tellingly, has not given us such a forceful response to what's happening, which is interesting considering how close they were to the SDF. I spoke with some Syrian Kurds who were worried that after all the partnership and fighting together against ISIL, the US may ultimately abandon the SDF and its Kurdish-led allies. Importantly, the US is now a close partner with Damascus, also in terms of fighting ISIL. In November, President Ahmed al-Shara, in a high-level visit to Washington, formally committed to joining the anti-ISIL coalition. So Washington now has two reliable reliable partners in its fight against ISIL, which might diminish the standing and power of the SDF in terms of its relations with Washington going forward.
Ayman, many thanks for walking us through all of that. Ayman Oghanna there in Damascus. Just to remind you what you're looking at, this is the skyline, the night skyline in Aleppo, where government forces have sealed off Kurdish majority neighbourhoods after evacuating large numbers of people. But as we've been hearing from our correspondent, there are civilians still in these areas. They are battling members of the SDF, Kurdish fighters, a formidable force, says our correspondent in Damascus, Ayman Oghanna. These are troops that previously were trained, were funded, were armed by the Americans to help in the fight against ISIL. This all came about as a result of a collapse of negotiations in Damascus about integrating the SDF into a new joint military. The SDF and the Kurdish community in Syria feel that they will lose a degree of independence and autonomy as the new Syria takes shape. Of course, these bring back memories of a time many had hoped was firmly in the past. Armenak Tokmajyan from the Carnegie Middle East Center in Beirut focuses on Syria, conflict and borders. He says the fighting is intensifying because integration talks have stalled.
Reintegration cannot happen just with force. There needs to be a strategy which I think has to combine three elements. One of them, offering an inclusive national framework. How is Syria going to look like, right? A lot of these armed groups, they don't want to lay down their weapons because they don't know how this state will look like. The second element will have to be a mix of force, but also persuasion to attract those semi-autonomous areas back into a unified Syria. And the third and a very important element is that this whole process will have to happen in a way that it doesn't trigger foreign intervention, right? Like we've seen in the south, in Sweda area, where a miscalculation by the central government or partly miscalculation has triggered the strong Israeli intervention. So to be honest, the central government is facing a daunting and very difficult task of combining all these elements into one strategy to end the fragmentation and with that end the instability in Syria and create a relatively unified country.
Take a look at this. This is the latest in Aleppo. You're looking at the nighttime scene, obviously, from the city of Aleppo, where for several hours now the Syrian government forces have been fighting furiously with the SDF, the Kurdish fighters there, in multiple Kurdish majority districts in the city. Casualties arriving at nearby hospitals, both civilians and combatants. We will, of course, be keeping an extremely close eye on all those dramatic developments in Aleppo.
Don't miss out, get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.